Good evening. My name is Sai Bresnan. I'm with Colov, with the Colov team, and I'm really glad to welcome you to this Autumn First Wednesday event, this November event on the theme of ecological sustainability. On behalf of Colov, and thank you to Concern Worldwide, who funds these First Wednesday events, and to our partner in the First Wednesday, the Department of International Development Studies, Maynooth University. Hi, Patrick. Patrick is with us from Maynooth, and he'll be moderating this evening. You're all really welcome. I'm especially happy to introduce this one. Ecological sustainability is something very close to my practice as well. And in introing, we wanted to acknowledge as well what's unfolding currently in Gaza. We wanted to acknowledge it, and I suppose the gift of the ecological perspective is that it reminds us of how we're all connected. We may think or may be told that there's things happening that are far away and are not of concern to us, or things that are happening to other living things on the planet, whether that be human or more than human, and that these aren't things that we're particularly connected to. But the ecological lens reminds us that we're all connected. There's an interdependence there. I suppose that's what we wanted to acknowledge as well, that the gift of this ecological lens is that it allows us to think about how what's going on in Gaza also belongs here, in the sense of the scale of the loss of life that's happening right now under the bombing, the suffering and the grief that's filling up, that it belongs here also. And it belongs here in a way that maybe can give direction and can give us orientation in terms of what we need to be doing, what we need to be connecting into, and how we can maybe forge more justice and a world of care and repair, and all the things that we're going to be exploring tonight with two amazing people and their amazing projects. That's Karen from Shelter Cree up in Monaghan, and Anthony from very nearby here in Dublin City Centre. We're on Parliament Street in Dublin City, and Anthony's coming from the Liberties with his projects tonight. And it's going to be an amazing conversation, and I'm really looking forward to listening and to hearing more about how they're connected in very particular ways to their place, and what they're trying out in that place, and how this theme of ecological sustainability speaks to them. So that's all from me. I welcome you all again, and looking forward to this hour of conversation with Anthony and Karen, moderated by Patrick. So over to you, Patrick.
Thank you very much, Sai. And welcome to the Colov First Wednesday Conversations with the theme of ecological sustainability, finding ways in. As Sai said, my name is Patrick Marin, and I work for the Maynooth University Department of International Development. And I'm going to facilitate the session for the next 50 minutes or so, and maybe a Q&A towards the end of that. So just to echo some of the things Sai said, we've plenty of signals and science reports to tell us that we need to change the system. How we produce, what we consume, the energy we use, our values and our aspirations. But in our search for alternatives, we need imagination, and we also need examples of the possible and the preferable. And tonight we have two speakers who are engaged in projects, one urban and one rural, that seek to connect people and the environment with the aim to promote repair, care and justice. So the two speakers, as Sai said, are Anthony Freeman O'Brien of the Robert Emmet Community Development Project. And he is going to speak about some of his work, I'm sure other aspects as well, around urban beekeeping with his project B8. And Karen Jeffers from Shelter Cree, County Monaghan, where they seek to rob their tagline, regenerate people and wider nature. So I'd just like to start, I suppose, by asking you both, I don't know who wants to kick off first, a little bit about yourself and a bit of a background about how you got involved in the sort of work that you're doing. So either Karen or Anthony, whoever wants to jump in.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Great. Thanks so much, Patrick and Anthony and Sive, for the invitation. So brilliant to get a chance to talk about Shield Degree. Obviously, a project very close to my heart. So my name is Karen Jeffers. I'm from Wicklow originally and moved to Monaghan for love. Why else would you move to Monaghan? And my now husband, Gareth, who many of you know, he was involved in Co-Love as well for a good few years and still is a member. But so the two of us, my background was in peace building, human rights, I worked overseas for a good number of years and then came home, was supported by Co-Love. And then his work would have been a lot in development education and all of those things as well. And I think, after many years of doing work in that area of social justice, especially on a global scale, especially, in reference to what you've said, Sive, as well, around what's happening in Gaza, at times it can feel very overwhelming. And when we came to our project at Shield Degree, I think a lot of what we wanted to do was, be in a space where we were able to, be part of something that really connected us with positive outlook for the future. And after being involved in that type of activism, where you can see a lot of suffering as well. And so that's sort of one of the things that brought us to Shield Degree, and the others are a real strong belief in that sort of development education approach, this transformational education, that there is a real need to change and a real need to shift how our culture is and how we're interacting with one another and with wider nature. And so this idea of taking it to the, this kind of immersive education experience, working the land, being involved in understanding our relationship with nature in different ways.
Good. Thanks, Karen. Anthony?
So I started working for the Robert Emmet CDP project about 4 years ago. I was unemployed for a long time, and I went to the community centre looking for them to make me CVs, but the girl who ran it, Maureen, she convinced me to try be a tour guide. So I tried that, and then when she was leaving Robert Emmet, she had a project where she had 2 hives, and she had nobody to take over the hives. So she asked me, and that's how really I started getting into stuff. I taught myself to be a beekeeper. It took me a good 8 months to even like bees. I was terrified for the good first year for it. But it took me, after I fell in love with them though, it changed my whole outlook on nature, especially because it was not something I ever felt connected to. I'm a city rat, and I don't really like leaving the liberties. It's very rare I leave this area, so I have never really had a connection to nature or had that feeling. But ever since I done the bees, I created a mindfulness garden from an abandoned space, and I was sitting in there one day, and it all just clicked. All just made sense.
But very good. I did it very brave to get involved with bees on a self-taught basis as well, I must say.
Maureen done a lot for me, so I felt like I owed her. Yeah, okay. But I regretted it for the first while,
yeah. I hope they were very gentle to you. So maybe just talk about the project itself, and you could run with it, so can you describe the project and sort of with B8 in particular, sort of the aims that you had for it, and how you generally go about operating it?
So I started with the 2 hives, and then when Maureen left, a new CEO took over, and we started talking, and we ended up getting 50 hives. So it was a big jump, and it was a lot of hard work to learn how to look after that and maintain that many hives. That's because the reason we wanted to bring it up is because we have a model that we get office blocks to install hives on their roofs, and then the company inside the office usually sponsors the hive and pays for it for a year. So that's how we fund the project, and we take people from the unemployment registry, and then we train them to be beekeepers. There's a few reasons for that, because I believe beekeeping has given me a lot of self-confidence and self-worth, and it's helped me mentally. I don't think there's any better form of mindfulness. There's no better feeling than being surrounded by 60,000 bees. You're not really going to be thinking of anywhere else. So I really believe that it can have a great benefit of just having people just come in and try beekeeping and just do it for an hour, and I think they usually feel better when they go off. They're after having a real experience in life. So there's lots of stuff we do. We green areas. I do a lot of talks in the schools. With kids, I like to go to where the kids are and bring the hive to them. Or I usually, what I like to do, if they're in the Liberties area, I'll go to where they are and I'll put the suits on, and then I'll walk them through these to one of my hives. So it's always a sight seeing about 20 kids walking through Dublin in bee suits, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. And you mentioned a mindfulness garden that you had created as well.
Yeah. So the digital hub gave me a space at the side of Patrick's Tower to sort of store a couple of hives, but it was a really derelict space. There was a lot of drug needles and a lot of beer cans. So I just started turning it into a garden, and now it's a really beautiful place now compared to what it was. It took me about a year to get it to the point it is now. I repainted the walls. I done a lot in it. It's a totally different place now, but it took me a long time, and it took me a long time learning about the plants and stuff because I haven't got a clue. I'm learning as I'm doing really with all the greening and stuff, and I'm learning how powerful it is mentally for people, especially in the city where you're just suffocating with concrete, really.
Yeah, trying to make that, and like you mentioned yourself in your own kind of bio, how kind of the connectedness, how you can create a connectedness then with people who aren't used to kind of engaging with nature then through beekeeping and through
beekeeping, and it's just the bees are sort of like a gateway drug. They sort of hook people, like they're really interested in the bees, and then once that opens them up, they're open to the rest of the conversation around green and space, around like I've made it. I have had a lot of people change the way they do things in the area. Like a lot of people have flower boxes outside their window now that never would have had, and they're more and more interested in actually what it's doing to them. It's more of a selfish thing. You know what I mean? If you want to get people on board, it's more you have to get them to understand how good it is for them rather than the rest of the world. It's like make someone understand how mentally powerful this stuff is, and they will come on board rather than explaining the world to them, you know.
It's interesting. Yeah, the connection, like start from the bottom up.
Yeah.
How it impacts upon you, where you make the bigger connections. Excellent. I'll ask you what you do with all the honey now later on.
I don't take it.
So Karen, can you talk us through Síl de Cree?
I will, but I also, that's incredible, Anthony. I did a beekeeping course this year, and my biggest fear was, would I be able to stand in front, would I be able to open up a hive with 20,000 bees? And it really is. It's a moment. It's that experiential learning that you're talking about there. You know, this moment where you can't think about anything else. Your mind empties, and you're just there, and you're trying to stay calm. And I think for many people, that's how the world feels at times. You know, I think, you know, particularly around the climate, it can feel that way. You know, if you really do allow it in, and you hear about what's happening and what could potentially happen. And so, yeah, I suppose part of our mission then at Síl de Cree, we say the mission is to restore the ecosystems and communities of Ireland. But it's always with this global lens. It's with that interdependent piece that Sive mentioned at the beginning as well, that we are interdependent, and that experience that a person has when they come and they work with us on the land or do one of our courses or whatever it is, that they can then apply that in a bigger scale, similar to what Anthony mentioned there as well. So Síl de Cree, the main pillars of the work are work in regenerative culture. So really looking at that cultural piece, that, you know, we can't solve the crisis, the climate crisis, without really looking at our cultures, the way we communicate with each other, with wider nature, with you know, the whole ecological realm, you know. So we need to look at those things and find a way for people to be reached and to be able to understand that. The other piece is around building resilient food systems. So, you know, we've seen that in COVID in particular, and other crises, so there's shocks that have happened in the system, how we're not really operating in a very what's that word, sovereign sort of way. You know, we're not really able to feed ourselves actually on this island, and that's a really strange place to be in. And so we do work around or we do workshops, offer workshops around food growing and all of those things, but always again with that lens of connecting into a wider piece as well. And then the third aspect is wide-scale ecosystem restoration, and that's really what we're very passionate about. It's this really inspiring message actually around what's really possible, and we get all this doom and gloom, like the story, the reality check's important, the analysis is important, but also nature. If we look at nature and we understand how nature works, nature is just abundant, like it's so abundant, and what it can do, it can regenerate, can regenerate in such fantastic ways if we allow the space for that to happen, whether it's, in an urban setting or in a rural setting. There's a real, nature's really needs more spaces like that where they're able to, where she or we are able to come in and regenerate. And so we're very involved in regenerative agriculture, which is a whole model of agriculture that is basically around building systems that that aren't extractive, just getting monocrops, all this sort of stuff. It's actually about working with nature, understanding the patterns of nature, understanding the way nature operates in order to produce food, and at the same time, food for us, but also food for the rest of nature too. And a lot of that's to do with the soil. And I'll get a little bit lost in all this, but a lot of that's to do with the soil, which is again another really positive story that we don't hear much about, which is, in terms of carbon and in terms of carbon sequestration, the capacity of soil to do that. If we rebuild our soils, rebuild the microbiome of the soil, that there's all of this possibility in terms of responding to the climate crisis. So that's the main work of Shield Degree, and we do this through workshops and different projects as well that we offer.
Really good. You both mentioned the connection between, I suppose, often you can kind of take something like ecological work or environmentalism and kind of have a particular viewpoint of what that covers. But both of you have talked about the connection that it can make. Anthony talked about beekeeping being like a gateway drug to, people now suddenly seeing connection that they have with nature. So I suppose on that, like in terms of how do you view the connections then that you're seeking to make proactively with the wider community on using kind of those two approaches that you're getting? Like, what are the challenges around that? Like, I know, Anthony, you talked, for instance, that it's important to get people to see themselves almost selfishly the impact that it has on them, and then you can scale up.
Yeah, I think especially with the climate conversation, it's so big when you're not, and like when you're not involved with greening, or you don't have a connection to nature. When you're just somebody who lives in a city and you're trying to just go about your daily business, you're just trying to get through the day, and then someone comes at you with like the big conversations about climate change and stuff. It can just be overwhelming, and you just shrug your shoulders and think, what am I going to do? Like, so to have people understand what they can do with something simple, like it's have a flower box, or like something, just try to find the connection in themselves, or have them understand how powerful a walk in the park is. Something that gets them hooked, really, just something that gets them connected. Then you can have the bigger conversations with them. I find if you just come up at people with, oh, the world is going to end sort of stuff, then you just shut up. They just shut up. And politics, I think, if you can take politics out of it altogether, I think it's the best way forward, because I think it's too political at the moment, and the conversations are too political, and the government we have now is not too popular, so the Greens are not too popular at the moment either. So I think everything is just, I think politics and sort of browbeating people is not the way forward. I think it's just getting people to understand how powerful of a connection they can, and how beneficial for their own spirit it is to be connected to nature. I think that's the way forward,
Yeah, I like what you're talking about, like in terms of that point you make about it being a very political topic, that people almost close themselves off when, for those that aren't, I suppose, receptive or into kind of issues around climate and ecosystems, you almost get like, is this somebody coming along to stop me?
Yeah,
so that you need to tackle that. Yeah,
they're going to take the simple life away from you. That's what everybody thinks about. Life is going to be much harder if we go the green way. Like,
yeah,
I think that's sort of the undertone of everything that go with the climate in Irish. I think that's the main tool to get people on board with them. Is your life is going to be terrible if these people get that way, you know.
And do you still get people kind of reacting that way? Is that to you? Oh, here comes Anthony's going to talk about climate change, or is
No,
it?
because I never really do. I don't talk about, like, I don't talk about anything where, like, oh, this is terrible. I mainly tell people about, oh, this is what I plant, or this is, like, tell people what I do. I never bring up climate change at all in talks. I just tell people what's beneficial, and I tell them why I do the stuff. I never talk about climate change, because I do feel like you can see the glaze coming over someone's eyes when the minute you bring up climate change. Them words in themselves, I feel like, here's the skull death. But if you give people a bit of a story and tell them why it's beneficial for themselves rather than the planet, I think they're more receptive.
Yeah, I remember reading it. Somebody, I think it was Gifford, was talking about if you can promote stuff in ways that may avoid that question, but it's good for people. He called it the honeybee effect. It's kind of coming back to the bees, you know, like for instance, stuff like change your transport system, cycle to work, like it's good for your health, but it also has kind of the other benefits of getting people to think about the impact that they have if they use kind of fossil fuels and stuff like that, and yet kind of benefit from it. Could I switch to you then, Karen, around kind of the political side of things? Because like you're situated where you are, you're surrounded by, I suppose, traditional farming. So how are you viewed in that context by?
Yeah, and I suppose traditional would say conventional farming more so, because, you know, I think a lot of it's interesting actually, because where we are in Monaghan, you know, it's very much cattle and dairy. You know, it's big. Well, some of them can be our family farms actually, but they're much bigger scale than what we're doing. And people who come and, you know, our neighbours or other farmers from the area come and see what we're doing. You know, we had pigs the first year, not pigs, when the first lockdown came in, we went and got some piglets. And I remember neighbours coming over, they said, oh God, these are doing this, what it used to be like at my grandparents' place, you know. So the traditional Irish farm is maybe more what we're what we're like, because it's learning from a lot of the things that were done, you know, by our ancestors or by other generations, were more in harmony with nature, as opposed to the models which rely over the top on fertilizers and chemicals and specialization, you know. So this mixed farm is quite rare now, you know, so they come to see a different types of animals, and it's a real nostalgia for people. And then obviously, I mean, I suppose you're getting at as well how it's received within our immediate community. I mean, people are very, very welcoming and kind. We've run regenerative agriculture course for farmers in the area, and we've had really good response. We've run it once, we're running it again now in November. I think it's subscribed now fully as well. But that's the kind of work we really want to do, is working with farmers, and then they can come to our site and they can see what we're doing on a much smaller scale. You know, we have, you know, we're a very small space, we have 1.6 acres, which is nothing compared to a lot of the farms around us. But we have different examples of regenerative agriculture there. People can explore it, see it for themselves, and think to themselves, oh, maybe this is possible. Maybe this is something I can introduce alongside. Maybe we can diversify a little bit. So the farmers, as far as we can see, and from what we know from speaking with farmers, is they're a victim to this system just like everybody else, you know. And it's you know, this capitalist system. Most of them are working second jobs in order to make a living. Very few people make a living off a small farm these days, you know. And then, yeah, they may have quite a bit of debt for different machinery and things like that. So I think people are interested, curious, and we'd love to see people come through the courses and then, you know, go and implement different systems on their space. But just on that previous conversation as well, I think like this other piece around that conversation around scarcity and abundance, like or something being taken from people. And I think that's one of the things that we really want to encourage with looking at regeneration and what's possible. Like we have this idea that there isn't enough for everybody, you know, that we have to lose something in order for us to be able to change in terms of the climate or whatever it is. But actually there is an abundance if we do things, and the abundance can be shown in many ways, not in riches and jewels, but more in the sense of what you get from, you know, what the people who work with Anthony get from connecting with bees, or what we get from the people who come and spend time in nature with us. Like they really get so much from it, and yeah, they mightn't even know they need it or want it. And yeah, it's interesting.
Changing your mindset for a while, just get kind of a deep immersion into an alternative. How does the work actually, so the work that you do, how does it bleed into your own personal lives? Like, is it part and parcel of it, or do you kind of compartmentalize it? Anthony?
No, it's one big ball. I don't think any part of my life could exist now without the other. I just graduated from NTID in sculpture, and I use the bees in my sculptures. I use moss a lot in my work. And that I wouldn't have done that before I'd done the beekeeping. I'd have never thought of. I think even the beekeeping encouraged me to go to art college. Like, it gave me the confidence to go and do that. So I don't think I could do anything without the other now. The beekeeping is really one of me. It's therapy for me. Like, it's how I get, like, it's how I escape the world. Really, like, I go anytime I feel stressed or nervous, I'll go down and I'll just sit watching the bees, or I'll go into the hive myself. But I spend a lot of time, if I'm stressed out, just around the bees, and it all just feeds into each other. I run an inner city tour as well. I give people tours of Oliver Bond and stuff like that. So I think and I know all the information about the stats around green spaces because of the beekeeping. So I include that in the tour, and everything just feeds off each other. I couldn't do one thing without the other,
All connected.
Yeah.
Lovely. Karen?
Yeah, I would say something similar. Like, I think a lot of our ideas from Shield Creek came from trying to live, live on the land and be there ourselves, like, and be quite true to what we're doing. So we're farming the land ourselves. We're looking after the animals, and we're eating the food that we grow, and and then learning all that as well. So it just becomes something, something that really just infects you. Like, somewhere, you can just get more and more interest in things. You go and do a beekeeping course then after that, but you do, you start with one thing. We started with growing I started with growing vegetables, and my husband Gareth with planting perennials and fruit trees, and designing a whole agroforestry system. And you just kind of, you learn more you learn, the more you discover, and it leads you down more different paths, and you find other organizations who are doing really amazing things as well, and you connect with those, and it's just constant. But and it's a very healing space to be in as well, to go out in the land and to just we're really lucky to have that chance to do that.
Yeah.
It's the people you meet, I think, as well, while you're doing it. I think when you meet other people who are involved in similar things, you realise how positive these people usually are, even though they're talking about climate change and all. They're usually very positive people who work in greening spaces and stuff like that. And I think it's to do with the actual greening of spaces, being around nature. I think once that clicks in your head, it's very hard to let go, or like, it just becomes a part of you, and you just want to learn as much as you can. So I think there's just so much around it that's just joyful, even though you can be overwhelmed by the stressful part. Just so much being involved in doing it daily. It's really joyful, and it becomes a real privilege then, more than a chore,
And is there more kind of, have you found in the years you've been involved that there's more activity around it, like, for instance, in greening and in urban beekeeping, for instance?
Yeah. Well, the flats is an example. Like, I'm from Oliver Bond. I lived at Stale. We had a real bad drug dealing problem in one of the gardens. They stole drugs from the garden and just walked to the gate of the hill. But then we started planting flowers in the garden. Isaac, who's one of the neighbours, he started it. He got out his window and just started planting. So we started helping them, and that transformed that garden. Like, the drug dealing just stopped there, and it moved to a different place. But it stopped there, and the people in them 4 blocks now use that garden all summer long. They have barbecues, which never happened in the history of Oliver Bond, and that allowed for other people to plant in the other gardens in the flats, because previous to that, you weren't allowed to use the garden, and the residents weren't allowed to use gardens. You could go into the garden, but you weren't allowed to plant or engage with the space at all. So
really,
that sort of brought that conversation on now, and people are engaging, which is really, like, it's really had a great benefit, and it's cleared and tangible, so it's hard to argue against it when we wanted other spaces in the flats to be garden. So that's had to be a real benefit for that stuff now,
Yeah, giving power back to the community themselves in their own space.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah. And what about you, Karen? Do you feel that there's kind of a growing movement, similar type organizations, or are you
Yeah,
plowing a lonely furrow? Sorry for the agricultural fun there.
not ploughing, no.
Okay, sorry, not plowing.
Not ploughing, no dig. Protecting the soil. Yeah, no, no, definitely not. We're definitely not alone. You know, and it's funny because, you know, I didn't know much about Monaghan before I moved to Monaghan, I'll be honest, you know, and you know, we moved up there, and, you know, actually the first weekend we moved there, there was a far right march in the town that we moved to. And, you know, it was quite, yeah, I was wondering, what is this place that we've moved to? It's obviously very conservative. Yeah. It's not true, actually. It's not true. You know, we went, Gareth went to that march and discovered the people who were actually from Carrickmacross were there. Well, some people from Carrickmacross were there in opposition to that march, and the people who were there from the far right were actually shipped up from Dublin, you know. So I think, and then and in a similar way, then we've met different activists, we've met different people who are interested in the work we're doing, and, you know, even coming from very different backgrounds and things like that. You know, I think people really resonate, particularly because it is a rural area, and because there is that history and that kind of nostalgia piece I said earlier, you know, about working the land and being connected with it in a different way to how people are now, how farmers are now, you know, that it speaks to people, it speaks to a wide range of people. And so, yeah, we've met many other amazing, we've connected with different organizations around the country, and then also internationally, then we're involved with the ecosystem restoration communities, which is, you know, it's an international movement for restoring land, restoring ecosystems in diverse places around the world. So it's a really great group of people that are just so inspiring, you know, to be a part of as well.
And how do both of you find kind of, I suppose, that the structures, the official structures, do you find them supportive of your work, or are they kind of barriers to your work? Like, I don't know, Dublin City Council, for instance, are they supportive of the sort of work that you're involved in, Anthony?
Yeah, well, they sponsor a Hive and they sort of help out, but I keep them at arm's length. I let my colleague deal with them most of the time because I find them very, very dysfunctional. Like, you'll have a conversation and you'll start a project with somebody, and a few weeks into the project they'll be promoted or moved on, and then you're back at square one, or the project falls apart. And that's like a constant, because we run so many different projects in the community centre, and through them all, that seems to be one of the big hurdles, is having a conversation with someone that's going to see a project through, rather than start it off and then move on, which seems to be just the way they operate, really. I find it a real struggle to deal with them, so I let Austin do that a lot of the time, you know.
Okay, you can handle that. Yeah. So not particularly so open, but there's no sort of consistency in terms of follow-up, or... Yeah,
like, they're really open. Like, I get along great with a lot of the senior people. Like, I get along great with the. It's just there's sometimes you'll have one great person, and then another person will just put a barrier there, and it's just very dysfunctional. I just find them very dysfunctional, and you can never really have a long drawn out project with them, because there's just so much movement goes on, and yeah, I just find it very dysfunctional. But when we do stuff together, and it's complete, I do find them very supportive. It's just hard to get one person all the way through, I find.
Okay.
You know?
And Karen?
Yeah, I think that would be a good observation. I think in some ways our project does speak to certain aspects of the work that the local council are doing and things like that, and local development companies. But yeah, it's sort of finding a way that it's, you know, that it can work smoothly together without all of the changes and things like that occur. I mean, we did benefit from some funding we built an education space last year, which is just open, which is we built it out of straw bale. We renovated some barns to use to do our workshops in, and we were able to secure funding through the LEADER program, which is a rural development program. So, you know, we're very grateful for that, because we wouldn't have been able to do it without that support. But, you know, it's you know, got to work for that as well. And, you know, you got to work out the supporters that are there, but they do exist. We just need to find them, and then hope that they are still there as well, to support you through.
It's almost like you have to try and find a champion who understands what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think we need to, as organizations, these entities are there to respond to the needs of the community as well. So like I think we also need to really understand them, and then sort of if we have the capacity and the energy to try and push it through, like to try and get our needs on the agenda as well. And I think I think that's important. Like it's important to understand that they should respond to what we need as well, so it can go both ways.
Who, Anthony, has been your big supporter, do you think, in B8? Who would you describe?
The digital hub, Fake and Caroline out of the digital hub have really supported us. The community mainly, though. It's mainly the community. It's mainly the people in the flats and the people around who spread the word and sort of give me praise and all. So that helps with everything else. But it's mainly, digital hub have been our earlier supporters. But I think the community support I get is the most important, because people are really on board with me around the area, and nearly everybody knows me, and everybody sort of loves what I do, and they think I bring a positive energy to the area. And especially I do a lot of talks around the negative effects of having the lack of green space in the Liberties. We have the lowest amount in Europe per person, so that has a real negative impact on the area. It's in the European law, I think it's 46 square meters you have to have per person for mental health, and the Liberties it's 0.6. So that's really, so it's really like, I think COVID really opened up people's eyes to how important green space is in a city, and I don't think there's any been real change. There's a bit of planting going on in the area with the wildflowers and stuff, but nothing anybody can engage with. And I think, especially in the city where we have a problem with getting green space now because we have a housing crisis, so any available space that comes up is going to be straight away, has to answer the housing question. And well, just building on top of buildings, and we're not considering how people actually live in the city, how people are going to survive. And that's something I'm really aware of, when I try to have conversations about.
Wow, it sounds like a whole new battle that has to be done around there there's such a gap between what's required and what's actually there available.
Yeah.
And is that something that's recognized?
I don't think it is. I just think there's a lot of lip service played to the stuff. Like, we'll put a little patch of grass or put flowers there, but the scale we need, I don't think we need. I think that we have an advantage of Ireland with the weather. It's so wet that we could use our rooftops. Really, we just waste rooftops in Ireland and in Dublin. They all should be green. I think in Luxembourg, if they're less than a 30-degree gradient, it's the law that they have to be green. I think that should be law in Ireland, because we have flat. Like, I stand on the rooftops where the keeping is, and I look around, and it's just acres and acres of space that could be used for green spaces for the bees, and then you could use the ground spaces for people. You can build the roofs and use the ground then for people to engage with nature.
I'll ask you about that when I come on to the dream question, but that sounds very good. Karen, what about you in terms of your best supporters?
Supporters, well, I suppose, so we started this project on our own, myself and Gareth, and then we then decided that actually, well, we want to do this together with people. We never really wanted to be doing it just the two of us, and so we set up a cooperative. We set Shield Tree up as a cooperative, and we brought on just amazing group of people who've been just incredible. They're people, activists, people involved in dev ed, global citizenship education, all of and environmentalism, just with a wide range of different skills and interests and support. And they've just been incredible. They really have. And just taking this kind of, very, I suppose, a small project, like we really want to bring it to many more people, and we want to bring it really, really far. And they've been just wonderful for doing that. So they're the first people that come to mind as the board. And then I don't know, just the wider, in our community as well, I do feel like we've gotten a great deal of support as well from people. And I don't know, other places like the schools, we do workshops with schools, we've done workshops with Maynooth as well, and just different people have reached out to us. I think it's one of those things, to quote the Big Lebowski, you know, you build it and they will come. But, you know, the amount of people who've come to us and just, you know, told, like, you know, they've heard of us somehow, and it just materializes into some wonderful collaboration that we, you know, wouldn't have imagined. And yeah, there really is a real appetite out there for people. And I think once they get a taste of being involved in something proactive, something that they can really just have that direct experience from, they really, they're really into it. It's great.
Excellent.
It's all about collaboration.
Yeah. So I suppose what about challenges that you face, like as an organization or the work that you do? We've kind of touched on them, but like, are there kind of 2 or 3 top challenges?
Yeah, do you know if the
comes to mind?
Is it the urban gardener? I can't remember his name. The urban gardener or the green gardener, and he says American gardener in Los Angeles, and he does a lot of greening spaces and growing vegetables in housing estates in Los Angeles. And he says the thing about sustainability is it has to be sustainable, you know. So I suppose that's, and not to overuse sustainability either, but you know, I suppose it's just the general, like, we want to dedicate our time to this and all of those things. But you know, you still also, you have to live, like, you know, as well. So you have to be able to pay the bills and all that sort of stuff. But I think this social enterprise model is a really, is something that we definitely are really trying to engage with as well. So it's not over dependence on funders and things like that, but being able to generate some way to genuinely be sustainable in the work that we're doing, so we can continue to do it and we can continue to thrive while we're doing it, you know. So that's a challenge. Obviously it's a challenge for organizations and people. I think I'll pass over to you, Anthony, then for other challenges.
Yeah,
I think
it'd be really much the same. It'd be funding, really. So we're not funded, so everything we earn goes into the project. So that's probably the hardest thing to do, is to pay people and make the decision. Sometimes we can train somebody to be a beekeeper, or we can run the free course, or we can never do both. So it's always sacrificing something to make something else happen. But the funding is the hardest part, I think, and then getting people to understand they're not getting honey out of me. That's one of my hardest things of the day.
You have to tell us about the honey. Where does the honey go then?
I don't take it. I let the bees keep it. I let the bees keep it. Yeah, a beehive would go through about 80 pounds of honey in a year. So wow. People feed them sugar water. I don't like that, so I just let them keep it.
Okay, very good, excellent. Yeah. Okay, so what about dreams then? If you could dream for your project and the work you're doing, what dreams do you have around what you're doing? Either of you.
So
go ahead.
Well, like, I mean, I suppose it's back to that kind of that mission piece, you know. We want to restore the community, like we want to restore the ecosystem, want to regenerate the ecosystem, you know. So that dream, like I can imagine it, you know, walking out instead of being surrounded by a green desert of ryegrass, you know, walking out your front door in rural Ireland and being surrounded by the, you know, the noise of nature, you know, being surrounded by all of this stuff that we're missing now, you know, and all of this life, all of this abundance, all of this growth, having thriving communities within all of that, you know, people who connect with one another, who you know, do different collaboration, different projects, whatever it is, you know, who get inspired by each other and continue to want to grow and develop together, you know. Just aliveness, like, and I actually see, this was an image I had a long time ago. We did this imaging of it being like a beehive. You know, it's like the humming of a beehive. And that's what a beehive is like. It's a functioning ecosystem. It's an incredibly intelligent functioning ecosystem, and that's, you know, that's what we're really capable of as well, having these functioning, buzzing, humming ecosystems. And yeah, that's really the dream. Like, that's the dream. And I really think it is possible, you know, and I think that there's a thirst for it. And I think even for those who aren't thirsting for it, or aware that they're thirsting for it, that when they do experience that, when people experience that, you know, when they experience some sort of a connection either with each other as human beings or with wider nature, you know, they know that that's home and that's right, you know. So I think we're able for that.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, like it's funny when you were talking about kind of just you talked about the noise, you know, and kind of almost the flip of Rachel Carson's The Silent Spring, you know, that deafness of modern agriculture. So yeah, Anthony, to dream.
A big thing would be green in the roads in the city would be a big dream of mine. Having
What would that look like?
They're very simple. Sphagnum moss is really amazing. Sphagnum moss, it's self-seeding. So if you put sphagnum moss on the roof, whatever drops in by a board will start to grow. Like it'd be very simple. It can hold water for. It can lie even in the summer. Like it could be baked, and it'll lie dormant then for. It can lie dormant for up to 100 years, and then a bit of water on it, and it'll come again. But it's everything else that grows in between the moss. So moss is I think is a really powerful thing that can, with our Irish weather, I think we could just spread it everywhere. It can absorb 7 times its size in carbon. So it really is a natural air filter. So I'd love to spread moss all over the roofs, all over the city. But I'd like linear parks. I'd like most streetways to turn into linear parks. There's a lot of laneways in Dublin that could be turned into linear parks. Pretty simple. And these are things for people to engage in these things and have green space to look at rather than a grey wall. And if I had a real big dream that I know is impossible, I'd ban all supermarkets.
Why?
Yeah, I'd ban supermarkets. I think supermarkets are antisocial. I think society as a whole would be better without supermarkets. I think smaller shops should start to exist again, which is it was better social interaction with people when the smaller shops like grocers and butchers and stuff like that. For older people, it gives them a better social life daily. And also, if supermarkets don't exist, then most countries would grow what they're producing themselves, what they're going to feed themselves. So I think supermarkets, I'd ban them all, and I think it'd have a massive positive effect on society.
Yeah, it'd have a great effect on growers, wouldn't it? And
yeah, like everybody.
It really, yeah, it'd be fantastic.
Cities, the town centre and cities and all, they all come back to life.
Yeah. A green Dublin. I've got pictures of it. Kind of Google Earth would change completely.
Yeah.
If you had
amazing, and we have the weather for it. It's ridiculous. We don't we're wet and damp, so we should capitalize on it. You
know. Excellent. We're coming up to. God, 50 minutes has gone already. I have 2 questions, and I suppose one is kind of how do you view sustainability now, and then the last question is what advice would you give to somebody who wants to get involved? Yeah, either in the work that you're doing or organization or whatever. So how do you view sustainability? It's probably a horrible question to end on after the dreams, but what's your view of sustainability?
Yeah, well, I did mention sustainability earlier, but we also like to say that, we're not really that interested in sustainability, because don't really think there's so much, we don't want to sustain things as they are. We don't want to just get by, that's kind of back to that scarcity image of we're all going to have to suffer in order to respond to the climate crisis or, to live, more coherently on this planet. But actually regeneration gives us a whole other mention or a whole other message and a whole other image, which is, we don't want to sustain it. We want to regenerate it, and we want to bring it to a better place, and I think that's really, what I would say to that. And then in terms of advice, I think, and I'm really hearing that from what Anthony's brought as well, this piece about just getting stuck in, there is, when you put your hands in the soil, for example, or you put your bare feet on the ground, very simple things to do, but they really do, it's part of us, and we can feel that there's different connectors in our skin that are affected. There's different hormones that are released in our body. We'll get a sense of well-being from doing that. And I think it's the same when we go and we get involved in a project we love, we're interested in. We work together with a bunch of other people to make something together to create. All of these things, they give us a sense of well-being and a sense of and that's what humans are here to do. I think to do these things together, positive things together, mind you. But this is I think the advice would be just I suppose if you feel that urge to do and to get stuck in.
regenerate and get stuck in. Excellent. Thanks, Karen. Anthony.
Something like that.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not really sure what sustainability means. It seems people say it to me all the time, but they always have a different explanation, and I don't really know what it means. To me, it's just, I suppose it's a bit what Karen summed up briefly. I don't want to sustain that, and I want to change things. Like the city, the city is a terrible place in a lot of ways when it comes to greening or just people's understanding of nature. And so it's probably to sustain would be the wrong word. You want to get rid of everything that's happening now and start again and sort of start afresh and bring a different understanding towards nature and towards the city. You really, like, it's a historical ignorance towards nature in Dublin, and a lot of time it's willful, but it's it's a long, like, if you like, I'm very interested in the history of the city, and it's always been there, the sort of this ignorance of the countryside and sort of a fear. It's usually where bad things had happened. So I don't know, I don't really understand what sustainability means, so I don't really talk about sustainability, or I don't really get it,
It's changed things.
If I was going to give advice, it would be just go out and do it. Just go out and engage in nature. Like, sometimes I do things just for the joy of it. Like, at the start of spring, I'll go out with seeds and just throw seeds places. And for no reason, I'd plant, like, along the trees, sometimes on Oliver Bond Hill, you see sunflowers growing out. That's because I went out and thrown a few seeds and just to see what happened.
Wow.
Like, I just enjoy doing stuff like that. And that's, like, when you do something like that, and you forget about it, and then a couple of weeks later you're walking past and you see the flower, or you see something, like, it's amazing. It gives you a great buzz. So just something simple like that will bring a joy to your day, I honestly believe,
Beautiful. Lovely. Well, thanks both of you for a really, really enjoyable conversation. We've come up to 5 to 7. Will I have a quick flick through some of the questions, maybe?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
So we have here question for either of them. If the relationship you've developed with the soil and bees, I wonder if the relationship you've developed with the soil and bees has also had an impact on your relationship with friends, family, colleagues, and their wider environment.
Yeah, I'm much more patient. I'm a much more patient person now. I'm a much more laid back person now, and it's all to do with nature. I think it'd be very hard not to do something that's so powerfully relaxing and mindfulness and stuff without having a real tangible effect on you as a person.
Very good.
Yeah, and I think because it was a question earlier as well, that it's becomes really integrated into your whole life, everything that we're doing has done that. So definitely it's impacted on how I relate to other people, and I suppose just came to my family home there, with a big sack full of potatoes and string of garlic and a load of stuff from the garden, and there's just this, like, it's just different relationships with people, in terms of the work that we're doing, and their kind of engagement with that as well.
Good. In the comment here, it'd be lovely to see Dublin City Council fund Anthony's idea for green roofs as a nature-based solution to slow the flow of rain in the city, reduce flooding, while also sustaining bees and giving residents more visible green space. Yeah. Question for Anthony. In his opinion, is there a relationship between the lack of green and recreational areas and disadvantage and antisocial behaviour?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But that's a well-studied fact, And there's a double-edged sword when you're greening. They call just enough. You have to drain just enough, because if you drain too much, then wealthy people want that area, and it creates gentrification. So there's a study, I think, in New Orleans where they're saying just enough. But I think it has a real effect on the city, especially. I think COVID had changed Dublin a lot. I think it became a really toxic place during COVID. It's created a new drug epidemic, and I think a lot of it was to do with isolation and having nowhere to go. We had a real problem in Dublin that people would show up in parks at the same time, and there'd be crowds in parks, and then all them people would be vilified but they had nowhere else to really go to walk and to do the walk or whatever. So I think COVID proved how important green space is and how damaging it is not to have it.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, I'm going to call a halt to that right now. Look, it was a fantastic conversation to have a chance to discuss these issues with you. Like, really inspired, and I hope to sign up for get out to meet the bees with Anthony sometime in the year, and get up to see Karen up in Shields of Crete, hopefully as well. And I encourage other people to do so also. So maybe hand over to Aga. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you so much. I feel very inspired, and like urban gardening and rewilding and greening spaces is really close to my heart. So I really, with you, Anthony, and with you, Karen, to disturb the concrete and disturb as well how our cities, but also how our rural areas look like. So I would encourage everyone to discover projects near you, because there are urban gardens and green spaces and even canal cleanups and things like that in your area. So please get involved because nature really can make a big difference. So I would like to say thank you to everyone for participation, and just say a couple of things. So we will be sending a follow-up email from this event with links to the projects that you were talking about today. But also we are going to send some links to the projects that are working in Palestine, because we think it's really important if you could support those projects with small donations, whatever you can, which we'll also send in this email. And we would ask you also to join our newsletter and join the next first Wednesday with Owen Dalton, who unfortunately we had to change the date the last time. So this event will be on the 7th of February next year. And once you are on our mailing list, you will get the information about this event as well. And it's part of the autumn series of First Wednesday. So it will be in, it will be in the winter, but it's still part of the series because we had to change the date. So thank you very much for your participation, and we will be sending you link to this conversation as well in that follow-up email. So good night, and thank you to our speakers, and thank you, Patrick.
Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.